of me?
Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
Good morning, Vietnam! I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
I wish I knew how to quit you.
Love means never having to say you're sorry.
You do. You'll shoot your eye out, kid.
What's up, film fans? Happy Sunday. Welcome to episode 297. You're listening to a new episode of the Cine-Men movie podcast. I'm your host, Juan, and I am joined by the cast, the crew, the guys. Zach?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
What's going on, man? Jay, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're good, man. It feels like it's been forever since we've been on here and hopped on and talked about a movie. How's everybody's week been?
Mine's been pretty decent.
It's been okay. Just one of those things, you know, when you get some bad news, you just have to hang in there and just do what you can do, you know?
Yeah, the reason why I went on the last podcast because I was still depressed. My doggy died. My dog, that was my boy. Little old Groot. Yep. He was a Chewini.
Yeah, sucks when you lose a pet.
Little dogs are the best.
They are.
Feels like a little part of you dies when your pet goes.
That's been my week.
It's been some tough weeks, but you know, with all the bad news we've kind of all gotten, it's hopefully there's some kind of light at the end of the tunnel.
I did get put on a waiting list for an apartment, so there's that positive.
That is a positive. They tell you how long that waiting list might be?
Probably about a month and a half, but they'd let me know.
Nice.
It's not bad. If you guys did not join us like Jay did last week we talked about The Mummy, the 25th anniversary of The Mummy. You guys can go back and listen to that podcast and check out all the links. They're all over the social media pages. Facebook.com/The Cine-Men Movie Podcast. The Instagram is all one word, The Cine-Men Movie Podcast. The X is at Cine-Men405, or you can email us at cinemen921@gmail.com. There you can find the links to all of our past episodes, upcoming events, and future giveaways, which our next giveaway will be live in person when we do 300 live at Rodeo Cinema, OKC's independent, non-for-profit art theater, showing new movies, old movies, and everything in between. We are the everything in between. Come check us out live Saturday, June 8th, 7 p.m., as we will have a screening for 300 tickets available now at okcrodeocinema.org.
Since I didn't get to join you guys last week for The Mummy, The Mummy is one of my favorite movies. I give it a 4 out of 5, and that movie is absolutely fantastic. It has to be watched with The Mummy Returns right afterwards. So there's my mini review.
Nice. It was a fun episode. Yeah, it was a very fun episode last week. So tune in, see what kind of stars we gave it. Today should be a pretty fun episode, at least a fun conversation. But there is a lot of stuff on the TV this week and in theaters. So Zach, did you go on location and go onto the field and check anything in person?
I did. Really, my only two recent watches was yesterday we went and saw the new John Krasinski, Ryan Reynolds movie. If you have anyone that listens to the show and has kids, go check that out. It's really, really cute. It's something different. Has a very good message to it. It was just a really cute, funny, very pull at your heartstrings type film. I was kind of surprised at how emotionally mature the movie was, to be honest. And then today I just got back, I don't know, about 2 or 3 hours ago. I went and checked out the 65th anniversary of North by Northwest in the theater. So that was a real fun experience. It's always cool when Turner Classic Movies does these throwbacks, and you can see them in the theaters and see what that experience was like. We did do North by Northwest a long time ago, so go check that out in the archives. But yeah,
Zach,
go check out If.
were you the
Hmm.
only one in the theater for North by Northwest?
No, I truthfully, it was me. I took my mom, and I think there was like maybe 20 other people in there.
Oh, good.
So it was actually a pretty good showing. So yeah, go check out North by Northwest, and go check out If in the theaters. Because to be completely honest, it'll probably be gone by the time Inside Out 2 comes out. I'm gonna be honest. So
I checked out the anniversary 4K edition of The Crows. Pretty good transfer. We'll be talking about that in July. So that should be a
Oh
fun
yeah, we will.
conversation. Saw 10 was a pretty decent rewatch for the latest episode of Friday the 14th podcast. And then I did a double feature of Dune and Dune 2 this past weekend. And I did give Madam Web a try. And it's definitely not as bad as I read. I've seen a lot worse movies and definitely a lot worse superhero movies. So by all means, like out of 5, I'd probably give it like a 1.5. But it's it's not trash. It's trash, but it's doable trash. It's recycled trash. There we go. That's how I'll put it.
What'd you think about Spider-Man's mama and daddy being all up in the movie?
That
I
was
didn't have a problem with it.
no, that was okay. Um, I thought we were gonna get some other kind of like mention of some kind of universe, but it looks like with it taking place in 2003, it kind of leaves you guessing that maybe that's like a Tom Holland universe, maybe. And with the multiverse now, it really does make you wonder that it could be any universe at any multiverse at any time, any place. But it did kind of have like just it realigns with Tom Holland's age now, so that kind of
Yeah.
made it a little bit of sense. Um, so I didn't mind Dakota Johnson. I thought the cast was okay. The only cast member I did not like was the guy who played the villain. Um,
oh yeah,
I thought the spider
yeah.
suit that he had was pretty cool. I thought the spider people in the movie with the whole mentioning of the superhuman spider and the backstory, I thought that was pretty cool. Something that's never been done before. And honestly,
I'll agree. I'll agree with you. It had some good ideas in it.
yeah, and the CGI is better than the last 2 Marvel movies that Disney put out. So I, I mean, I honestly probably could have given it a 2 if I wanted to like probably not be too harsh on it, but I don't know. I think I could probably sit through it again too. So, um,
That's fine.
and the cast was pretty cool. I think. I mean, when's the last time you got to see Adam Scott really do like some fun comedy in like a recent movie? You know, that at least that like kind of meant something. I always enjoyed some of his stuff in the early 2000s. So, if I had to recommend anything, I mean, Madam Web is getting trashed all over social media. If you want to give it a shot, it's on Netflix, I believe. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
and then Dune 1 is on HBO Max, and Dune 2, I believe, will be on HBO Max soon. So that's what we'll talk about today.
It'll be on there May 21st.
Oh, so in just a
Tuesday.
few days. Cool.
Yep.
So, Jay, what about you? What'd you check out this week?
I went through and rewatched the Caesar trilogy of the Planet of the Apes movies. So I watched about the first 15 minutes of the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. There's a real good copy going around. You know, I don't have time for movie theaters. I'm poor broke. And those so far pretty good. It's set 300 years after Caesar passes, so I'm looking to see how that goes. I've been watching a lot. Does anybody know who Guy Ferrari is? The guy that does Dine-Ins, Diners, and Drives.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
show. Makes
Yeah.
me hungry every time.
Well, he has a game show called Guy's Grocery Games. I went through and probably watched like 6 seasons of that and 3 seasons of Rick and Morty. So there's my recent watches. I recommend Rick and Morty to anybody. The Guy's Grocery Games, if you're into game shows like that, go ahead and go with that. And if you haven't checked out the Caesar trilogy yet, check the Caesar trilogy out. They're all 3 worth it.
That they are. Those are some good movies. Yeah, so if anybody wants to recommend anything else, whether we watch it or recommend it as like maybe a topic of discussion on a show, let us know at the social medias and hit us up as we're going to get ready to get into Dune Part 2. So if you have not seen it yet, highly recommend it. Go give it a shot. And we'll probably get ready to get into some spoilers. So IMDb has it right now at a 8.7, Rotten Tomatoes at 92%, while the Metascore is at 79%, and the Letterboxd gives it a 4.5 out of 5. With a $190 million budget, this movie grossed a little over $710 million this year, with the release date of March 1st of 2024 this year. Paul unites with Shani and the Furmen while seeking revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Dune Part 2 takes place right after Part 1, starring Timothy Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista, Christopher Walken, Stellan Skarsgård, directed by Denis Villeneuve.
Can I
Guys,
start by saying that
go ahead.
I have not read the books, but I could tell there is so much dense shit that they couldn't put in the movie that if you read the books, it makes me want to read the books to finally kind of fill in the gaps. And that's a good thing from a book adaptation, in my opinion. When you want somebody to read the source material, that's always a plus.
It's a good bring up. I have not read the books either. I did see the 1985 version. We had a full episode on that a few years ago. We also had a full episode on Dune Part 1 the day it hit HBO Max. And now we're continuing with Dune Part 2. So, like I said, spoilers. Go give it a check. It'll hit HBO Max this Tuesday, or you can check it out on Physical Media. Or actually, there's still some theaters showing it here around the city. So go check it out. Dune Part 2. Zach, I believe you're the only one who really watched this twice. You got to check this in the theater. What was the theater experience like, and was it packed? And what was it like revisiting it for the podcast?
Yeah, I saw this in the theater back in March. Completely packed. It was an IMAX screening. You know, that the IMAX holds about 600 people. 3/4 of it was completely filled up, so people were really excited about this one. Obviously, this was supposed to come out in November of last year, but due to the writer's strike, we had to wait a couple months. If this had come out last year, Timothy Chalamet, he would have had this and Wonka, so he would have had a killer, pretty good ending for 2023. But walking into that theater, I was like, wow, that was very impressive. I maybe considered it even better than the first movie, to be honest. On this rewatch, I still feel that way. I just have some nitpicks. I have more nitpicks on the second watch than I did the first time around. What about you guys?
I've seen it twice now.
Oh, you saw
I've seen it twice as well. One on a shitty cam quality, and then one on an HD quality copy. And I'm kind of like him. I thought it had some problems here and there, but I liked it overall. My biggest thing about the entire movie, it's like John Carter, if anybody can remember that movie, where while you're watching the movie, you're like, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. It's because they pulled from that Dune source material for other movies so often that it's like I've already seen Dune Part 1 and Part 2 in other movies, if that makes sense.
Kind of, yeah.
Right now, I only have the one watch underneath me, but I did watch it in the same 12-hour span as the first one, and I have to admit, I think right off the bat, if I could say something, I would probably say super impressed after you hearing so much about Dune 2 and the anticipation, and then you have to wait an additional few months because of the writer's strike. It's like, man, is this movie really going to be worth it? And then to see that technically, yes, it's still in theaters, but they pulled it just not even a month out to go to streaming. It's like, man, what's going on here? But that's just the day and age that we're in. I talked to Zach earlier. I didn't know this movie grossed almost $1 billion. For it to already hit already hit streaming and video. So I'm super impressed, and I think we'll have a good conversation about Dune Part 2. And we'll probably reflect on Part 1 as well, but The returning cast, top notch. I forgot that Christopher Walken and Florence Pugh and some others were like added to part two, so it kind of just made me feel that more much hyped about it. Guys, I want to kind of like talk. We were all three on the episode where we talked about our favorite movies of last year. If this movie had came out in November like it would have, would this movie maybe even have crapped you got craps? Would this movie have cracked your top three?
It would not have.
No.
It would have been. It would have been in my top five. It probably would have been in my top five. I don't know if about top three, but top five for sure.
Yeah, and you guys can come up with some questions, but I'm going to go right off the bat that I still believe part one is the better movie. This might be like the Halloween discussion, and maybe two is better when three comes out. Because I know part two sets up. It's a little bit more of a journey of setting him up to be the Messiah and for him to go through his motions of what he eventually will become. So I think that's probably where I have an issue with part two.
Well, see, that's where I had my issue with part two was that, like I said, that I've seen what I was watching is like I've seen this in other movies before. So like his trials with the sandworm, you know, he bags the biggest sandworm ever, you know, on his first try and shit like that. You know, it's just I felt like I was watching other movies while watching it. And I had like a problem with the ending. Like the ending was sealed up to me too quickly. Like they captured the emperor and boom, bang, boom, boom, it's over. And that's where I was like, okay, we could have had a little more time to breathe. You're almost a 3-hour movie. We could have went with another 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think out of all of us, I think I'm the only one that has actually read the source material of the first Dune book. And part one and part two is the first book, Dune Messiah, which is they've officially announced that they are going to do that. Dune Messiah is the next book in the series. So really, I don't know how many years Messiah takes place, but I know it's the same characters and Chalamet, Florence Pugh. You know, it'll center on those two characters plus Zendaya's character and a couple others. So.
Anna Taylor-Joy has signed up to be in Dune Part 3.
Yeah.
What was her character name again? I know she makes a small appearance in this movie, and it's technically uncredited.
She's the unborn sister, essentially.
Okay, so then the movie might take place maybe 30 years after the events of this movie.
Probably, yeah.
30 years later.
The sisters are born.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay, I can kind of agree with you on like, you know, I had a little bit of an issue from 30 minutes until the last 15 minutes. I kind of felt like it dragged just a little bit, but I do feel like the rushed ending kind of helped that dragginess feeling. And I think maybe you're talking about some of the scenes where like maybe Batista's character and Josh Brolin maybe could have had a little bit more of a
showdown.
A little bit more of a lashing out instead of oh, that's it, that's done.
That's what I mean. I felt like it was just I just felt that it was wrapped like they caught the emperor so quickly. They did this, they did that so quickly with the ending, and I was like, okay, that's how we're gonna end.
I mean,
okay.
But truthfully, that's how the book ends. Honestly, Paul and Fade Rabba have their duel. Essentially, Paul begins the Holy War, and that's the end of the movie. The only difference is they had to update it because in the book, Shawnee becomes basically a concubine to Paul, and he marries the princess. And so, like Zendaya, in this version, Zendaya's like, no, you go ahead, I'm out. So that's really the only main difference.
I did like Austin Butler's character when he was first introduced and everything. The nephew, and how I was like, oh shit, Elvis is in the movie. That's cool. And he didn't look like Elvis, which was like, now that's a chameleon actor. He went from being Elvis Presley to doing this movie, and you're like, holy shit, some of that Elvis could have carried over, but no.
Well, funny thing you actually bring that up is because Austin Butler actually had to work with a dialect coach because he still had the Elvis accent while filming the movie. So.
Well, they did. I think Elvis did get rid of the king for this performance.
Yeah, I think Elvis had just come out when he started filming this. So,
I like his look. I like how badass he was. Like he just shut off his
He's a sociopath.
Yeah. He just straight up doesn't give a fuck, and I like that. I like that about him. He even threatened to kill his uncle for making him fucking. He's like, "Were you trying to challenge me, or are you trying to kill me? What are you trying to do?" It's my birthday, and he went off and did all this shit, and it's like, oh shit, he ain't playing with nobody.
I do love the introduction, like you said though, but the black and white like Coliseum fight introduction of him, that was a really good scene.
Well, and it's funny because like in the trailers, you saw black and white sequences, and I'm just like what is this? Like what are they doing? And the sun is so bright. I love like the transition when like they're walking towards like the outside, it fades from color to black and white. That's like technically this is a beautiful looking movie.
Their makeup, I could be wrong, but in just my mind, the Harkonnen, they kind of had the makeup of George Miller's Mad Max movie.
Max.
The bald-headed guys with the white faces and shit like that. They kind of had that look to me. Yeah. So that's where I see things being pulled from different places, because it's like John Carter. The book was written 100 years ago, and it's like, yeah, we've seen this in Star Wars, we've seen this in Star Trek, we've seen this in this movie, and that's where I kind of feel like I've seen some of these plot points before. It's like in different movies.
Well, it's interesting because these two movies do such a better job of telling the story, because in the book, it's much more of an ecological like warning to what we could do to the planet. Essentially, like what if like we made the Dust Bowl like 10 times worse than it actually was? Essentially, like what would that happen? How would that affect the world? And it's like summarized in this like desert planet type thing, and so. I like how they briefly just talk about it. Like, look, these are the political aspects of like what this planet represents. But then it goes into like Paul's like hell-bent mission on revenge, even though, his father taught him in the first movie, don't go for revenge.
So like the 1985 movie to me feels like it's way more closer to the book than anything, because they are talking about more of what the spice is and can do for the future, the present, to where this movie, I feel like it's part of the story, yes, but this one is really more about the now and here with Paul and what he means to these people. And
the reason why they did that, in my opinion, is because they set up spice beautifully in the first movie.
Exactly.
Because I rewatched the first one last night. I made it about an hour and 15 minutes into it, and that first like 20 minutes they talk about spice, how it's for interstellar travel, how people need it for this, people need it for that, but the people that live there, they use it as a hallucinogen. They use it for their
and that's all you need. That you just need maybe a 20-minute scene, talk about the importance of spice, and then you can move on and just do the characters and what they represent and what their motives are. And I think that's what the director Denis Villeneuve succeeded at the most while adapting this.
Well, he also did it with like such poise as far as setting up the conversation in the first movie and not making it like a long out, drag out sequence like they did in the original. And like, yeah, the spice is important, but
didn't they, if I'm not mistaken, didn't they sit there and have it where Paul was doing his studies, and they basically, that was a part of his studies, was what the spice meant and everything. That was a great exposition for the audience. Paul's learning, we're learning.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't want to read the 700-page book, here's a 15-minute scene summarizing everything, and that's perfect. That's all you need.
They tell you about the suits that you need on the planet. They tell you about the Freeman. They tell you about the sandworms. It's an exposition dump, but it's not one of those ones that's a bad exposition dump, because we have to know this shit.
Yeah.
And everything comes back. The spice comes back. The worms comes back. Even the little the kangaroo desert mouse. Yep, it comes back, which he names. He's like, that's his name amongst the Freeman people. So it's just like, that's like such good screenwriting of like, we're going to set up the strings and we're going to pay them off as we go. The opening sequence of this movie, like they're in the desert and they're trying to hide from the Harkonnens, and you see the wide shot of like the jetpacks going over like the mountain. I was like, that on the big screen, it looked beautiful.
I love how this movie, even though still set in the sands of time, it has a different look to it. How the first one, the sand and the time was like real bright and almost like a
Well,
white
I
sand,
noticed I
and this
noticed a
one,
blue tone to the first movie, like before they left to go to, or was it Arrakis? Before they left to go to that
Yeah.
planet, everything
Yeah.
had a blue tint to it, like it was a natural. You know what I
sand,
mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
Before the sand, but when they finally got to the planet, everything was super bright because we, just like them, are getting accustomed to this bright place. So it would make sense
Yeah.
thematically that this place is a bright, unforgiving place, and this is exactly what they heard about. So we're seeing it as they are. It's like, holy shit, this place is fucking bright. Oh my god, it's hot. You know.
Yeah. That's a good
And
point.
by
I didn't
this,
think about that.
and by the second one, we're so used to the planet now. We see it for its golden rays, and we see it for the spice and the air. You know, we
Mhm.
don't see it that bright anymore because we've adjusted ourselves to it.
Yeah. That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
I could have just been
Um,
reading way too much into it, though.
No, I mean, honestly, like if you think about the cinematography in this film compared to the first one, I do agree with you. The movie's a little bit more like tonally,
orange.
it's more orange than it is bright. You're right about that.
The mom in this movie. Let's talk about Rebecca Ferguson for a little bit because she plays Jessica. She returns, and it's almost like. Do you guys kind of feel like she started getting like a little bit demonic in this movie, almost like she got possessed?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think she took the, what was it, the prophecy to heart, basically to prove that Paul was the prophecy and that she would go along with whatever needed to be done to prove that Paul was the prophecy, even, you know, going as far as killing him in that ritual where men's not allowed to do it. And he survives it.
You also get a
Well,
lot. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going into you also get a lot more of Javier Bardem's character, and like I was wanting to bring up like were the demons that he was talking about just like a joke to kind of scare Paul, or do you think those are real and maybe she got possessed by one of the sand demons?
No, I don't think she got possessed. She drank the water of life, and that essentially gave her the power of, like, they call them the Bene Gesserits, and it's like the all-knowing person essentially. Like they know past, future, and present essentially.
She basically got caught up in the situation. She's now on a different plane than everybody else.
Yeah,
and she done a very good job.
Yeah, and essentially, I haven't read Dune Messiah yet, but I'm going to before the movie comes out. But I think because the sister was obviously in the embryo and she was enveloped in that stuff, she's automatically, that sets up something else farther down into the mythology of Dune. But I remember reading a little bit about it, but I'm not exactly sure what that is. So, I thought one of the coolest action sequences in the movie was that one with Paul and Shawnee, and they were like dodging the helipad thing as they're jumping. Yeah, as they're jumping between like the spice harvester. I thought that was like a really well done action sequence in this movie.
Oh yeah, the action scenes in this movie were very good. Like, there's a couple of times where I didn't get, they're hiding in the sand, and they just pop up out of the sand out of nowhere, near the end when they all attack the ships and shit. I was like, I think they would have been seen unless they unless they burrowed.
Yeah. But I was thinking in the theater, I was like, I really hope we get to see that little mouse, a desert mouse thing again, because it's so cute. And then like the minute I thought it popped up on screen, so I was like, oh yay. I think honestly my only gripe or nitpick about the movie, like I was talking about, was just the time length. It's like by the time we get to the actual climax of the movie and you get to see the fight between Austin Butler and Timothée Chalamet, I don't know about you guys, but I just kind of felt exhausted. Like, okay, like, can we kind of just wrap this up a little bit or just move it a little quicker?
I didn't feel exhausted. Like I said, I felt more that there should have been a little bit more to it in a way that it just ended too quickly. So that's my experience with it. I just felt it ended like things were close.
Things were
Things were
closing
wrapped
off
up
too
to me
fast.
like, yeah, and like they caught
Yeah.
the emperor, you know, and it didn't take them shit to do it. And I'm like, well, it should have took them a little bit more, but whatever.
Yeah.
It's your movie.
I think
Yeah.
the
I mean,
journey
they
the journey to get to the area took so long that by the time they got in the same area as the Baron, it was an in and out because the toughest part was just getting there.
yeah.
The killing or the fight sequence wasn't going to be, you know, wasn't going to be lengthy. It was just the journey of going, was it north, going south to
Going
getting,
north.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Like thinking about it, I was just like, yeah, I mean, you're right. They get there, they defeat everybody, they capture the Emperor. Those two fight.
Yeah.
The Holy War begins, and then the movie's
And then
over.
it's over.
See you in a couple years.
With Dune Part 3.
Yeah, I think that's also the biggest like, again, you have this with most trilogies, especially if you know another one is coming, is once you get there and get to the final sequence, the thing that might ruin the movie for you is knowing, hey, you don't get another ending chapter for another 2 or 3 years.
Well, see, the
Yeah.
thing is, when these were written, they were only doing Part 1 and Part 2. It was only after Part 2 did really well that they were like, all right, we'll continue on. So there was
Yeah.
never a
But I think only
trilogy
this-
set up for this.
No, it was always meant to be like two films, and then, you know, you got to remember that first Dune movie came out a year and a half into COVID, and that movie made bank. You know, people actually went and saw it in the theater.
Wasn't it a day
And
and
then-
date release from MTV?
Yeah, HBO Max.
HBO Max.
Yep. And so, you know, the director was like, "Look, you know, I'll go ahead and finish. We'll do the first book, Part 1 and Part 2, and I'll go ahead and do Messiah, and then I'm done." And did you guys see the trailer for Dune: The Prophecy? It's going to be an HBO Max series later
I
this
did
year.
not.
No, I did not
It'll be,
either.
it'll be a prequel series before Paul and all that. So
Where's
So
it set at?
it'll be set on Arrakis. I think it's actually
During
dealing with
the-
like the Bene
the
Gesserit
Harkins
and
time?
like, yeah, I think it has something to do with that. So
I just saw that Part 3 got greenlit in April, so it kind of made me wonder, like, what if this movie wasn't successful, nobody went and saw it, like, were they still going to end up doing a Part 3?
No.
No.
Money
So,
talks in this situation. This is a high concept sci-fi movie, bro. In order for it to continue being a franchise, it had to have made money. Had to.
Well, it made a shit ton of money back, and it still kind of makes you wonder, like, man, only $190 million budget. This movie looked amazing, sounded amazing. The score, we didn't even talk really about the Hans Zimmer score, which he came back to do.
Yeah.
The cinematography. So
The cinematography is
So-
gorgeous in this movie.
yeah. So Dune Prophecy, what I was talking about, it's set 10,000 years before the events of these two movies. The series follows two sisters, they're Harkonnen, like you said, Jay, as they combat forces that threaten the future of humanity and establish the fabled sect known as the Bene Gesserit. So yeah, that's essentially what the show will be about.
Oh yeah.
But they're kind of doing like the House of the Dragon thing with like how they do with
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. Like it's set 700 years before Khaleesi and all that. So
well, that's also smart to just kind of get away from what the films are doing to kind of
Yeah.
create their own story. Even though we all kind of had, like, well, me and Jay kind of had an issue with just the ending, and
mhm.
like my issue was the length it took to get there. Then Jay's issue was just the time they were able to get there and just do away with it. Zach, did you have any issues with, like, where was your issue with the pacing? Because you said did you feel like it was a little too long, or it could have been like 15 minutes faster? Or?
This movie's 2 hours and 45 minutes long. Honestly, I think you could cut like maybe 10 minutes off, honestly. I mean, like everything that is in the movie is important. It leads to something else farther in the road. But I don't know. I just felt like like I said, by the time we got to the actual attack on the Iraqi city, I was just kind of like exhausted. I was just like, okay, I wanted, a little bit. I wanted to get there a little bit sooner than we did. Something else. I don't know why this bothered me so much, and I don't remember this being in the book. Do you think that the whole time Paul is like saying like, I don't want to be, I don't want to be king. I don't want to be all this and that. I'm just fighting to revenge my father. But after he drinks like the water of life, I feel like he's become almost like a tyrant in a way, even though it's kind of like the Godfather thing. Yeah, it's kind of like the Godfather thing where like Michael doesn't want to become part of the family, but by the end of the movie, he's just like he takes on that mantle without realizing that, essentially.
Well, the whole movie was set up with his mother making him the prophecy. So eventually, when he drinks that, right, he thinks in his own mind, "I am the prophecy now," because after he drinks from the what is it, the mother's milk, whatever the hell they call it, he becomes this, like you said, not a tyrant, but he becomes more of a, "I am the prophecy. You will bow down and you'll listen." Yeah. Well, and then he starts talking to that temple. Yeah, he starts talking to the other like Fremen, and like he knows everything about him, and like that's like a, oh shit, he is what he says he is type thing.
I kind of got more biblical feels than anything than comparing it to The Godfather. It kind of felt more, especially when you say the Messiah coming down and avenging his father, and
Well, I'm not talking about the like it's Godfather in nature. I'm just talking about the thematic theme. I understand what Zach is saying about. Yeah, it's about how a man doesn't want something, but he's forced into it, and he has to do it no matter what. Yeah. That's the Godfather. He doesn't want Michael doesn't want to become the Godfather, but in the long road, Michael knows deep down, all right, I'm the Godfather. And this guy, same situation with Paul. He's like, I don't want to be the prophecy guy, but you know what? Fuck it, I'll be the prophecy guy.
It's what's best for business.
Is there any of the new characters that you like more than?
Oh, go ahead. I was just saying, I always appreciate the Godfather bring up.
Yeah.
I thought Christopher Walken was misused in a way.
Oh, you see, I thought he was really good. Like, even though he only has like one important scene, I thought he was excellent in it. Honestly,
I just thought he was too stoic for the situations he was in.
I enjoyed he was in there. I kind of wish he did have a little bit more screen time.
Yeah.
But I really do like the setup and the scenes he had. The importance of the Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And then you said the other new character was obviously Florence Pugh's character. She plays the princess.
Yeah. I like how she's kind of like a reminder to the audience. It's like, hey, if you didn't see part one, here's like a little catch up at the beginning of the movie. So. To be honest, like I thought, and like I said, her character might have more to come in the third film, but all right, we got like tornadoes going on. I'm sorry, guys. I kind of thought she was kind of underused, essentially, even though like she's kind of like. She knows what's going on, and she knows the potential consequences. I just felt like her performance is really good. Don't get me wrong. It's just they could have done a little bit more with that character.
But don't they set her up to be the queen, basically, with him?
Yeah. Yeah.
That she gives her life to him in order to make peace.
And to save her father, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of had a question about, maybe one of you guys can answer it, but like right before Paul kills the Baron, what he says grandfather? What was that about?
He's related. He's a Harkonnen.
Remember at the beginning of the first movie, whenever he's talking, the Baron's talking to Oscar Isaac's character. He's like, "What do you want to do, cousin?"
That's right.
Yeah, and essentially, Paul's mom is one of the Baron's daughters. That's the connection. Because I forgot all about that. I was like, "Oh shit, that's actually a thing." So it was a cool twist. Like I honestly, like I said, I forgot about it, and I was like, "Oh yeah," and it kind of changes the dynamic of what Paul is capable of. I kind of think.
And I completely agree with Jay's like bring up of how both these movies make you want to just, at least it did me. It made him want to go read the books, and it made me want to do the same, and it made me want to just completely just bathe myself in the lore of this story franchise, the characters, everything. I don't think it
I
made me
did
want
that
to
with
go.
Lord of the
It,
Rings.
it didn't make me want to go watch the 1985 one again, but it did make me just want to express myself more with Dune. What'd you say, Jay?
I said it when Lord of the Rings came out. I immersed myself completely in those books. All fucking 1,500 pages. I read the Silmarillion. I read the Hobbit. I read anything because there's certain books that Tolkien did that is only the first couple chapters of a book, and he like, no, I'm going to change everything. So you have to start the chapter all over again in chapter 3, and it's like the Silmarillion is written that way, where it's a weird. It's written like the Bible, bro. The Silmarillion is basically the Lord of the Rings Bible, and it's so.
Doesn't it have like a lot of like
lore.
family legacies and stuff like that?
It does. It basically tells where Sauron came from, because he was basically he was a fallen angel. That's basically the same. If you've read the Bible, then you basically read the Silmarillion, basically, because it's, he falls from Numenor, blah blah blah, and shit like that.
So watching these movies back to back made you want to just go get whatever you can to just read about Dune. Yeah,
I know there's comic books as well of it.
If you're gonna read Dune, I think it's fun to see like where this story came from. Honestly, but can you just, because this book came out like in the 60s or 70s or something like that.
It was like, I think it was like 72.
Yeah, and so it's just kind of interesting to see like where, as a society, we thought science fiction was going to go, and that's like the fun part of it, reading the book. So, and what do you think that is? Like, we watched the 80s Dune and we hated it. We almost didn't do Dune Part 1 because of that experience. Like Dune and Lord of the Rings, why do you think it is? It's like, yeah, we've had prior iterations of that, but these are like, okay, maybe these are like the definitive editions or definitive versions of that story.
I think.
I agree.
I mean,
and you were right. It was done in the 60s. It came out in 65.
Yep.
I kind of think it's just the way that the director took maybe their approach on the film. I think Villanueva did a perfect job. I think he was maybe the perfect sci-fi director to kind of do these two movies. How it was like when you look at David Lynch in the 80s, his movies were already
kind of what the hell's going on.
Right, but I've enjoyed all of David Lynch's movies before and after Dune, and Dune, I could not just do it.
Wasn't the original Dune a made-for-TV movie?
No, it was
in the theaters.
That was the one. Okay. That was the one after. There was a 2000s version, and I think that one was made for the movie, for the TV.
In doing some research on the original Dune, I found out that if people that didn't read the book, they didn't know what the hell was going on, so they put like these little, I would call like a pamphlet, and it had like all the different words that the characters were going to say, and it had like a little definition of what they're going to talk about. So it kind of gave like a little knowledge. It gave like a little, of what you're about to watch.
That'd be cool.
So
I think this movie is just man, I think if it did come out last November, this probably would have made my top 5 at least. I do think, even though it kind of dragged and it was like almost 3 hours, and then the ending was like boom, kind of rushed to where maybe you didn't get a 3. I just think it had enough action, it had enough story, it had enough just kind of lore to it.
My whole thing is that they spent all this time building everything up, setting everybody up, and then for them to have that really quick ending. That's my biggest problem with the movie. Like I said, it could have been 20 minutes longer just to flesh out more of the fights. We could have had, there was too many things missing in that final 20 minutes.
Well, I agree. I think you could have had a bigger bigger fight with like Brolin and Batista, especially with all the stuff that happened to those two in the first movie.
Yeah.
Everything that the Baron took away. So I do agree with that. I think there could have been like maybe 15 more minutes of action.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and to me, like as a studio, it always kind of bugs me when it's like a 2-hour and 45-minute movie. Just do 15 more. Make it a 3-hour movie. If you're like 15 minutes away, just go ahead and do that.
Maybe
You
those
already know
deleted,
people are going to tune in.
maybe those deleted scenes weren't enough to fill in a 3-hour movie, and maybe the budget was like, hey, if we hit an extra few scenes, we'll go over 200 million, and that just wasn't in the books.
Yeah, maybe.
So
I think the director really showed his hand with Blade Runner 2049 and be
I
like,
still haven't seen that.
and then
it's really good.
let's not to mention also though, like, was the movie done? Did any of the writers' strike really have an effect on the actual, product?
I think the movie was done. It was ready to go. I think the writer's strike ended like a week before the movie was supposed to come out. I think you could have still pushed it and got the cast out there, did the promotional tour, and it would have been one of the highest grossing films of last year. So, but it didn't have any competition, which is always good. But this movie was going to make money anyway, just because of how big the first one was. So,
yeah, it probably would have been mad. It may have made a little bit more too if you put this movie out on Thanksgiving Day. I don't know.
yeah,
Or instead of,
that's true.
or from maybe instead of going from November to March, maybe release it on Christmas Day. Because I don't think nothing really came out on Christmas Day like normal.
Other than Aquaman 2, but
Yeah.
go to our review on that.
What was that?
So,
Go see one of our past episodes for our review on that.
Let's get into. Oh, go ahead.
No, just something I was going to ask. You said you watched these movies back to back, just in a 12-hour difference. Did it flow really well going from part 1 to part 2?
Jay watched back to back. I think I watched like you said.
I watched it back to back. As soon as the credits for part 1 ended, I started part 2, and it kind of had a good flow because at the end of the first one, they're in the desert, remember, and they're showing the sandworms crawling around and everything. And then the second one, it just kind of picks up, and they're all like laying down in the dirt, and they're scoping shit out. So it's that you do feel a time lapse a little bit, but it doesn't feel too much of one.
So I enjoyed it in a 12-hour span. Jay, since we watched it back to back, and I almost was like, no, I'm not going to do it back to back because last time I did that, it kind of did make the film seem overwhelming, and I did have an issue with the ending. So maybe that's kind of where I do have an issue with the ending. Do you think that could have been an issue with you, Jay, if you just watched part 2 without a rewatch of 1?
Very probable, because just like I said, because they set up so much, and then the ending just comes like, boom, Emperor's captured, they're done this, and then like we won. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's how we're ending it. Okay.
Maybe that's for me, but even though I still did the almost back-to-back thing, I don't think that's going to reflect my rating or my scale of it, because I know the rewatchability is probably going to be just as good, if not better. I don't think it's going to lower at all with the rewatch.
No.
I'm going to score this movie a little differently today, so just FYI.
Zach, well,
I
go
just
ahead,
said
Jay.
favorite scene. I just said favorite scene. I was reading the tagline. Go ahead.
Zach, do you have one?
I think I have to put for sure the fight between Paul and Austin Butler and Timothy Chalamet. That was a really great choreography fight. Seeing the little sand mouse, and then just that whole next battle sequence of them dodging the helicopter thing, with the spice machine. Spice miner. Thank you. And then the gladiator fight. Shooting that on black and white. That was beautiful. So
Zach's still my favorite scene. It's the gladiator scene when we were introduced to Austin Butler's kick-ass little, especially when he cuts that one's throat and it's like it's off balance. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then he goes out there in the arena and he's all like it's my birthday, basically. Fucking come on. And he turns off the protector and he just goes to fucking town. And it's like, there we go. There we go. Don't be cruel. So, yeah, I'm going to agree with you. That fight scene was amazing. That's my favorite scene in the movie.
Great fight scene. Austin Butler introduction. Even though it was a little too short, I do like the interaction and then the ending look on Josh Brolin's face when he stabbed Batista in the throat, and it was just like, for my
Gotcha,
people.
bitch.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It had a good solidification of this part is ending. Let's go on to the next thing. Almost like Jason Momoa's death in the first movie, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
I also liked when Paul said, like, yells silence, and the Emperor's like, "You shall bow at my feet," and it was just like, your feet. You're lucky you're going to keep your head. And I was just like that. That to me was just like, okay, so this is not the Paul that we saw in the first film. This is like someone that's completely different. That I guess that's where the tyrant, what I was talking about, part came in.
This is the transformed Paul that gets the fucking prophecy and he's becoming it.
Yeah.
And I liked the scene where he got to pick, where he chose his name, and they were all in that little tent, and they welcomed him in. And I do say, anytime Javier is on the scene, just him as an actor in general, I think he takes every scene and just I think he steals
He's a
it.
scene chewer.
Yeah,
He's a scene chewer for sure.
That was a good character moment where they picked his name. That was cool. And did you catch the No Country for Old Men reunion with Brolin and Bardem?
Yeah. So it was fun, but I also think, man, it's just a good film in general. When you have somebody like Javier Bardem as an actor, and he's so just powerful as a performer, but he also doesn't take away from Paul or Timothy's just performance as well. It's like, man, you got something special when you have all those personas in one scene. So,
I mean, and I'll give credit where credit's due. The casting director. I mean, this cast is like stacked. I mean, that's a hell of a group of actors you can have in a movie. So
I thought Rebecca Ferguson was probably the most underrated person in the movie because she was just so sly about her motives and everything and how she was.
She's sneaky.
So,
it's almost
very sneaky.
Yeah.
It's almost like the movie ended and you still don't trust her. Like, I started not trusting her in the first one, and it just continues throughout this entire movie. Yeah. So star rating. I kind of got my words mixed up earlier when I said the first one is better than this one. I think they're just equally parts. They're very good films. So, Jay, we'll start with you.
All right, since I didn't get to review the first one last time, I'm going to go ahead and sit there and say I'm going to give both films a 4, but together a 4.5. Because they do make they make one cohesive movie together. And that's a very good thing. And that's a very hard thing to pull off with a part 1 and a part 2.
That is.
Yeah.
So there's my star ratings.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead. I'm still writing.
I gave Dune Part 2 back when we were doing the 1 through 10 scale. It was, I think I gave it like a 9 or a 10. I give Dune Part 1 a 5. I'll give this one a 4.5, essentially just because just the pacing of the movie just kind of got to me a little bit on this rewatch. But overall, it's a 5. I think this is an awesome adaptation of this story. And honestly, I'm looking forward to the prequel series, and I'm looking forward to Dune Messiah. So we'll see what comes next in this story. What about you, Johnny?
If you guys want to hear my rating, go back and listen to the older episode. No. I gave Dune 1 on our 10 scale. I gave it a 9. On this 5 scale, Dune 1 gets a 4, and Dune Part 2 gets a 5. I really do appreciate it. It is like it's like our generation's, like Jay said, Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's up there, the lore, the but I think this does a little bit better job at keeping you entertained throughout the entire time. Even though I had some 15-20 minute pacing issues, it wasn't like some of the pacing issues I had with Lord of the Rings. It's an updated
Right.
3-hour scale version. The score, the cinematography, the love interest between Zendaya and Paul, the mom, everything is fun with this movie. So it's our Empire Strikes Back. I feel like it doesn't have like that deep of a
That
uh,
dour of an ending.
that down over an ending, yeah, for sure. But I think it sets up a better third film than Empire set up Jedi. So
Yeah, I agree.
I think the third.
I just got like 10 hate emails right now.
Hey, as
I
long as we
think
don't have Ewoks in the third one, we'll be all right.
that's what I mean. Like I think Messiah will be hands down a better third ending film than Return. So
Yeah.
it's like that we have to wait maybe 3 years, but I'm excited to
Mhm.
see where this movie goes. Good news is hopefully pre-production can happen before next year, but
Yeah.
I'm excited. I give this one a 5. So it was
So
a
5, 4.5.
which means it's a good movie. So Tuesday when it hits HBO Max everywhere,
Go
at least
check it out.
at least in the US, yeah, go check it out.
Go
So
max it up, as we say.
And they have part 1 and part 2. So if you want to do a double feature, have fun.
There you go.
but
But next week, what are we doing next week, Johnny?
man, next week we're already at the end of May. Next week is our 6th annual Memorial Day War episode, and next week we are talking Apocalypse Now. Francis
Oh,
Ford
dear Lord.
Coppola, 1976.
You're trying to break my brain, aren't you?
Hey man, it should be fun. I think every time we talk war movies, especially now that we have this new thematic of the episode where we just have a conversation about the movie, I think we could talk all day long about the Vietnam War.
Oh,
And
yeah,
now
that's it.
not only are we're not reviewing the movie scene by scene. I think this is going to be a more in-depth conversation about war than we actually think it's going to be. So I'm actually
Yeah.
excited to see where we lead next week with this Apocalypse Now episode.
Well, I've seen bits and pieces of it, so I'm not sure what the political ramifications are while through the movie. So I do understand the political ramifications of real life. So I don't know how
Now,
far apart they are.
there is like 15 different versions of this movie. Are we going to do the theatrical cut or the final cut?
I believe we're gonna do whatever's on Voodoo. No,
Well, you have all three of them on Voodoo, bro. So which
Do
one
I?
you choosing?
All three. I kind of want to do, just for the hell of it, I kind of want to do the final cut. It's like 3 hours, but just if you're going to do Apocalypse Now, you might as well just do it.
I think the only version I've ever seen is the theatrical cut. There's the Redux version and then the final cut.
The final cut's the newest version of it. I think that's the version I've seen. I haven't seen the theatrical.
Which is actually shorter than the Redux version.
Yeah.
So
how about we just each choose one film and watch it? One of us watches the theatrical, one watch Redo, and then one watches the final edition. Be like, here's where we all came to. Here's where it is.
hey,
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, let's randomly just pick one. I'll be the sucker. I'll volunteer and watch all 3 of them. But I think it should be a fun conversation next year, or next week. Yeah, my bad. It's just we've had some pretty fun conversations discussing war movies on Memorial Day. This year we do it on the Sunday before, so it'll be pretty fun. And then we kick off June with 51st Dates. That'll be Sunday, June the 2nd, and then Saturday, June 8th, 7 p.m. Don't forget to come check us out at Rodeo Cinema, live on location. If we don't record the episode there, at least come hang out with us and watch a screening of 300. So should be fun. Saturday, June 8th, 7 p.m. And then June's full schedule. Check us out on the social media because June's full schedule will be released tomorrow. And you guys can check out the schedule on social media. So, other
We
than
got
that,
some
guys,
good ones in there.
anything else that you want to shout out or talk about before we head out of here?
No.
No. Other than that, go check out Dune. It comes out on Tuesday, HBO Max, Dune Part 2. We're going to go watch Apocalypse Now and talk about it next Sunday. So everybody have a good week, and we'll see you next week on a new episode of the Cine-Men Movie Podcast.